And my favorite Euro nymphing flies. I'll usually run these on a split rig, so I'll have both flies down at the same time. And I'll usually throw out one of these woolly buggers on the bottom, bounce them on the bottom, and I'll have my stone fly floating back here behind it. And really effective setup. And so we'll go ahead and start going through some of our materials for these flies. We're gonna tie a dark olive brown woolly booger. We're gonna use some dark olive brown marabou. And you can tie this anyway. A lot of people just use black, especially if they're using muddy waters, if they're somewhere muddy, but I'm in some pretty crystal clear water, and I try to match like sculpin and other things that are coming down river. So I'm also gonna use some olive brown dubbing to match. So they're pretty close. They're a little off, which doesn't bother me, but they're pretty close. Then we're just gonna stick with some standard black hackle on this woolly bugger. We're gonna go big today. We're using size 4 streamer hooks. Good size. We're using some big size dark black nickel cone heads. And we're using some thick lead. Now you don't always have to go thick with your lead depending on where you're fishing. I fish in some really deep, fast moving currents. So I try to bounce my flies way to the bottom. If you're somewhere where it's kind of flat, lighter, not so deep, fast water and it's shallower, you don't have to put as much lead as I'm gonna put on here, but you'll see I'm gonna dump some lead onto this fly here. So let's go ahead and get our hook set up with a cone head. Oh, you know, I'll be right back. I forgot my bobbin and thread in the other room. Go grab that real quick. I'll be right back. We're gonna do black thread for all on, just like a normal cone head, going forward. Some people I see nowadays are flipping those around backwards, and it's giving it a different look, but I don't know, I don't tend to do that. I'll be right back. I'm grabbing some thread. Okay, so got my bobbin and thread going. Get some all right, we got some thread going. All right, so begin just slapping your base on there real quick. Get it going down a ways. All right. Snip off your little tag in there. And I don't always tie down to the very end of the shank here. I almost go to about a little bit farther than where the tip of the hook is. And I come back up. So real quick base on there. Now I take some lead, and I'm going heavy with this lead. I'm gonna wrap a big chunk of lead on here. You all are gonna freak out. That's way too much lead. But I'm in some deep fishing holes, so that's what I gotta do. Start wrapping that lead around there. I mean, you're gonna see how thick of a lead base is on here. But a lot of times I won't even catch my fish on this woolly booger, but it'll bounce it slow enough on the bottom where I won't have to have any split shot or anything like that, and I'll get them on the stone fly. And if I'm not running a stone fly with this, generally I'll run a caddis fly. Sometimes I'll run a midge, but generally it's most of the time just stone fly where I'm at. So I can wind that up more towards the front, push it in together real tight. And then what I do is I start tying off on one end of the lead to make kind of a stopper so the lead doesn't slide around very much. Then I start to work back towards the other end. But seeing how much lead I have on there, I'm gonna put even some more lead on there. I know it sounds crazy, but it really helps me where I'm at get that fly towards the bottom of the river. Yeah, a long time ago, somebody told me you're never supposed to go more than 6 wraps of lead on a fly. And it's until I heard about Euro nymphing that kind of changed that thought for sure. Now, tie this lead in, make sure it can't go anywhere. And then I tie it in real good, really, really well. Now I'm going to wrap some dubbing in here so I don't tend to get too worried about how even it is, and it's not as important, whereas a stone fly or something like that's a little bit more important. So now I'm going to pull out some of my brown olive marabou here, and we're going to get one with some nice thin tips. Now what I mean by that is I'm looking for one, sorry, I'm a little off on my camera here, that has these nice thin ends like this. Now you have the thick ends like down here, and we're going to use some of that to thicken it up towards the base of the tail on this thing, but I'm really looking for some of these thin ones up towards the top. And so when I'm doing this, I'll just go ahead and pull the whole tip up like so, the whole tip of that feather. Just drag it on up, like so. And I just snip it on off of there. So then what I'm stuck with is a piece like so. Then I'll lay that down on there first. And I always lay this on the bottom side of the hook. So the hook is spinning the other way. I don't want it to bunch up on this hook here. I want it to lay nice and flat on the bottom end of this. And I just start tying it on in, right down to where the end of the lead was. So that's kind of where I want the end of my dubbing, and where the hackle will end right kind of where this part tapers down and gets smaller. I like that. Then I'll take in some more of the thicker stuff, like the base, more of the base of this, and I'll use some more of that. So I'll grab a big chunk of it like so, But what you'll see happen here is I don't put it way as far out as I did on the other one. I bring it way farther back so it's just a little bunch, not all the way to the end of the tail there. And what you'll see that does is it makes it more bushy right here. And when it gets wet, it makes that have more of a thin taper as it goes out. Then start tying that back in and on up. Now I'm really bulgy right in here, and I kind of tend to not really like it when that happens, but it's all right. We'll make it work. Now your next piece is to add in some black hackle. And you can use different colored hackle. You could make this an all olive one if you want. Or like I was saying earlier, you could take and make it an all black one with black dubbing and black stuff. But I like to take that dark olive and then use a big black hackle. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna strip back our hackle up towards the top. And if you're a beginning fly tyer out there, you need to know that, you always got to strip it like that. You see how the end here is stripped back. There's no feathers on that spine of that feather. That really is what allows a good hold on that hackle. And I'm going to strip it back even a hair farther. Then I'm going to hold it on there. Right where the feathers start, I'm going to butt up right next to where the tail starts. I'm going to tie it on in real good. Make sure it's tight with some of those wraps. Now, this is why I kind of stopped my base because up high, is because it tends to work down that taper back down to a point like this, and it's right back to where you want it if you're normally tying. If you can see how far it pushed that tail back from the tip of the hook. So now that we got our hackle tied in, it's time to add in some of our dubbing. I use this dark olive brown. That's what I like to use. I got a lot of those olive sculpin where I'm from, and this really tends to work on them. So I start at the back. Get my thread pretty wet. I start spinning in some dubbing on there. Some people use the wax. I don't know. I don't tend to use the wax. I just kind of use some saliva and just wrap it on in there. It tends to work for me pretty decently. You see how I pull down on the dubbing and the thread with my fingers? I don't let it bunch up, I keep it tight. I really think that's a key when you're wrapping dubbing in, is to not just pull on your bobbin, but to also pull on the thread and the dubbing as you wrap it. Kind of keeps it more tight, and maybe that's just nitpicky, but it's how I like to do it. Get your thread wet. See how it starts to come off if you don't keep it tight? It starts to bunch back off. That's why I kind of like to pull on it all and keep it really tight in there. Sometimes it doesn't always look real perfect, but it'll be all right. And I'm not shy on the dubbing. I pump it on in there. Excuse the baby in the back. It's no big deal. She's just having fun back there. Got to get her tying flies here in a few years. Then usually where this spot tapered down in the front, I'll just hammer in a bunch of dubbing. And I'll even hammer in just some regular thread in here just to build a big piece that'll push up in there and hold that cone head a little better. Now, I don't know if the comments work or not, but I've been trying to get someone to tell me if the comments are working while I'm live, because I can't see them. So anybody who's watching right now, if you want to try to throw a comment out there so I can see if it's working or not, I really appreciate it. Not that I'm trying to put you to work or anything, but I'd appreciate it. All right, so I got pretty much all my dubbing tied in right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping my hackle back around. So I always pull it up from the bottom and I try to make sure I'm not pulling any of that marabou with me. Then I just start wrapping around. And I take my time here and I like to make sure my wraps are pretty even looking, but I mean, in all reality, I've seen some people have some pretty hectic wraps. So, you know, I don't know how precise you need to be or how much time you really need to spend doing it, but I try to make mine pretty consistent and pretty even. Then I'll come around the head and sometimes I'll wrap it back like that to make that little, see how that push that loop back? But sometimes I won't. Today I'm gonna do it. Then I just wrap around, tie your hackle off. Never throw away these ends. Never ever throw these away, even if they're only that big. You can always use them for wings and other things. Always have a little tackle box by to save that stuff in. Never throw it away. Go ahead and wrap, make sure that's really tied off well in there. Depending on how you like to do your knots, a lot of people do whippet finishes. Depending on the fly I'm doing, I'll do it different. What I've been doing a lot recently, I've been doing the UV glue, getting my line wet with the UV glue and then wrapping it and then hitting it with the light so it hardens it back there, but it's kind of hard to do when you have a cone head. So what I'll use is get my other glue, which I forgot in the room. Now you can buy the hardener glue or whatever you want to use, but I just use nail polish. It's cheaper and I can steal it from the old lady too. So I'll get it wet like that before I even wrap. Then I'll do my last wraps with it wet like that. Then you can use your whippet finish or whatnot. I just tend to tie a simple knot. Stick it back there behind the cone head, especially when I've already gotten it wet like that. Tighten it right where I think it's the most wet, and I'll double it. And that's it for the woolly booger here. That's all you got to do. That's your woolly booger. These will bounce on the bottom of the river like so. This is super heavy, so it'll weight down to the bottom, and then I'll have another fly hanging off the back. And how I tend to do that fly is the golden stone. So let's do a quick rundown of what we're going to use for the golden stone. If I can avoid making a mess here too much. So we have some golden stone dubbing. I really like this color. It's pretty golden. It's pretty bright. And I use that because I'm tending to do dark everywhere else. So I need a little light contrast on that body some. And you can pretty much do this any phase you want. You can do olive, black, whatever yellow you want, really. I've seen some people make some pretty cool orange and black ones too that were productive over by Bernie. And so those are different things you can do. We got some yellow tungsten bead heads here, heavy ones. Some rubber legs, yellow and black. They got a little sparkle to them. I don't really care to have the sparkly stuff in there as much, but that's what I could find at the fly shop these days. Then we're gonna put a little bit of lead on this one as well, but it's smaller, thinner lead, 0.25. You can even do 0.15 or something smaller, thinner gauge if you want. And you can even, like me, I don't even really have to put much lead because I'm going to be using that woolly booger to bounce on the bottom. So having it lighter is almost a better way to go about it. But it just depends on what you're going to do. For this particular size, we're going to go size 10 for this golden stone. We're using a curved nymph hook. So if you can see that decently at all, I don't know. But it's a little curved nymph hook, and that's what we're gonna rock with. We're also gonna be using some of the amber D-ribbing, which I'm having a hard trouble finding in the stores these days. I can't find it anywhere, but if you can get your hands on it, buy it up. But I like the light amber from where I'm at. I don't really tend to care much about the darker orange color. So yeah, light amber, that's where we go with that. So we'll take our hook. Oh, one other thing I'm going to be using too on these ones is I'm going to be throwing some of this clear stretch. That's just that flat plastic stuff. You don't have to have it, but I'm going to use it on this one just to show you what the look will be like on the back when you do it. Oh, drop my bead. Got a baby nowadays, so I can't be affording to drop beads somewhere. Daughter will end up finding it and eating the darn thing. Okay. So, there we are. A little bit big of a bead head for this size of a hook, but it's all right. I'm gonna try to scoot in closer on this one so you guys can see a little bit better how I'm gonna do this one. Okay. Now, with this one, I'm more worried about my base than I am the woolly booger. I'm just gonna make sure I tie a nice, simple little base in. Start up towards the bead head, get like 1 or 2 wraps, and then wrap over yourself. And then I start to trim this tag end off very early just to avoid any thickness. And it might not seem a lot, but when you're tying on a size 10 hook with a golden stone, that thread thickness can really add up quick. So I try to keep this really flat, simple as I can little base on here. And I'll wrap down pretty decent. Almost all the way down the hook shank. And I'll stop right there. Now, I'm gonna get out some of our yellow and black rubber legs. I'm gonna go ahead and peel one of these off. And I'm just gonna hang it with extra length on it. I'm just gonna hang it over the edge. And I'm just gonna start wrapping back upwards. You know what, before I do that, oh, see, sometimes you mess up, and it unhooks your previous wrappings. So now I'm gonna have to go up the hook a little bit. And I'm gonna start right there. Make it easy on myself. You want to make sure you get it on the sides of the hook. I'll do them both at once just to avoid having to wrap back up it. And I'll stretch them out too. That way I can avoid that rubber getting real thick in there. I'll come back up. Those golden stones have those two tails coming off the back. And again, I'll leave this long. I'm not even worried. I can always in the field trim those down or do anything I want to it. So I leave them long just because I don't need to risk having them too short. Okay, so next thing I'm going to tie in is my D-ribbing. Now, a lot of people will leave this stuff rolled up on their roll, but just for the purpose of this fly, I'm gonna snip it off just so I can make it look real nice for this demonstration. So we're gonna hold our D-rib right on top of the hook. And we want it to go almost flat with the D part going up, because the D-ribbing is shaped like a D. So instead of this plastic coming off round, it's actually shaped like the letter D. So I'd like to put the flat edge down on the hook and have the round edge coming up off the back. Then I wrap right back down the back of this hook again, and I'll pull this tight to thin it out. And on this hook, since it's actually going to be kind of smaller, sometimes I'll tie these on size 8. Is kind of where I like to tie them. And then I'll add that clear plastic in on the back. But for seeing the size of how big this is going to be, I'm going to avoid that clear plastic on the back. So I wrap it in tight, and as you can see, I'm trying to make that body as even as I can with the thread. I don't want big bunches of thread on this fly. Okay, so got my tail in, I've got my body D-ribbing ready to go. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some lead into this. Now I'm not going to put a whole bunch like I did that woolly bugger, but right in this little blank spot where I'm missing some size from the base to where all that D-rib and tail's tied in, I'm gonna add just a little bit right in there if I can. What this will also do is different than the woolly buggers. All that lead is more focused up towards the head of the hook, so it tends to keep your hook shank up off the bottom of the river, so you tend to get less snags, so it's bouncing on that bead head and not getting hooked up. Okay. Okay, let's tie that lead on in. Okay. Now, I'm going to wrap this D-rib, but first I'm going to pull it this way some so it doesn't twist my tail too bad. Then I'm going to wrap the same direction I'm wrapping my thread. I don't care if you bring your thread towards you or if you bring your thread away from you. Whichever way you like to wrap is the exact direction you are going to wrap your D-ribbing. Now, I don't know how much farther I'm going to be able to bring this D-ribbing. I'd like to get one more, but I think it's going to be too tight. I'm going to go right to the top, and we're going to tie it off right there on the top. Sorry for the kids' tunes in the back too. Got a baby and it is what it is. She gonna have to listen. And snip that D-rib off really tight, and then make sure you wrap a couple more times so it doesn't come unwrapped. That's pretty good. I like that right there. I'm gonna hook it real quick, give you a show what it looks like. Try to move that tail back a little bit, but that's what she's looking like so far. This is a really dark one. Like I said, you can change it up. You can go thread or whatever color, and it always changes it up a little bit. But I wanted to make this one really dark. Now we're going to go back to our rubber legs, and we're going to tie these onto the side. I'm going to put them on just like so. So I hold it that way, running just alongside the hook. And I just wrap it once, wrap it twice, maybe 3 times. I'll give it a snip. Bam, done deal. Now, I'll run to the other side of this hook. Turn it a little bit so you can see it. And do the same thing right on the other side. And I don't care if they're long right now, like I said. You can always trim them down later. You can always trim them down in the field. Now, that's where that's at. Now, this is where you really need to put in your clear plastic, and I probably should have done it right before I put those legs on. Would have been a little bit better, but we're gonna make it work without it. I'm actually going to switch up since it's where it's at and how small this fly is. I'm actually going to change. I'm not going to use my 1/4 inch clear. I'm going to switch it to some 1/8 inch clear, which that's part of tying flies. Sometimes you're in the middle of it, you're like, you know what? I think it would look better if I did this. So that's what we're going to do. So we get a chunk of this clear pulled out. I'm going to tie it right to the top, directly in between those legs, or where we're going to start with this. Right like so. Tie it right on the top, like so. And you have to pull these legs out of your way for a sec. Go ahead and do so. It's not a big deal. Okay. So you're about to slam some dubbing in there anyways, so it's not going to matter. So go ahead and get your dubbing ready. Get your thread wet there. Go ahead and twist that stuff on there. I try to start it out pretty thin and then let it build up and get thicker. You'll kind of see why in a sec what that'll do. But twist this so I can show you. Pull your legs out of the way if need be. Keep wrapping right in here like so. Get behind those legs and then just start moving up that body. Now you can do different body segments in here. I like to do it like that. So what I'll do is I'll get a good round spot here on this body that I like. And I want it to tie on here to kick those legs backwards. I don't want them coming forward, but I don't want them going too far back. That's a good spot right there. Okay, now that I'm here, I'll pull this clear plastic forward, but I'll go like so. I'll take my dubbing and thread and I'll wrap right over the top of it. Actually, you know what? I got to get that dubbing pulled back. Sometimes I'll keep my dubbing right on there, but it's not working right for me right now. Oh, off the camera. So you guys can see that right there. Then I'll wrap forward and I'll get that first segment of the body wrapped in there. Then I pull it back again, get one wrap, and get your dubbing back over to your thread. Then you got it back again, get it held back, pull your legs back, get your dubbing back on in there. Now, you can see there's a little black segment in the body there. You can cover that if you want, but sometimes I feel like it really works out well to have it, especially if you take a golden stonefly and you flip it over, especially a dark one, it'll have that weird look like that. But sometimes it gets covered up, but sometimes you can leave it. I don't think it really matters. Then I build this golden stone part up big, wrap in behind the lead. Then I bring this plastic back forward one more time. I pull it back, another wrap, another wrap. Then old TH showed me this. I don't know if he wants his name out there, but I see him when he comes up. Hooked him up with the bag of morels last time I saw him. But we're gonna pull this tight. He showed me how to do this, and then you're gonna snip this like so, and it leaves this little. You can see that on there. It's like looks like the wing casing on the back of one. So then I'll pull it back, make sure it stays back. They're tight. Make sure I'm in there real tight, real tight. Now you can kind of see that wing case kind of stick up a little bit. I really like how he did that. Probably one of my favorite parts of this fly. He's the one who showed me how to do this fly too. It's pretty much his pattern, not really mine. That's for sure. But man, is it one of my favorite ones. So This is what I was talking about. How what I'll do is I'm gonna unwrap this 2 wraps real quick, because those last 2 wraps are what how I'm gonna finish this fly. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this ultra thin hardener, and I'm gonna get it wet on there, on my line, just a little bit. Pull it up and down the thread. We'll see, that might be a little much. We'll see. But while it's on there, I'll bring it up, let it all kind of flow down the line, get to the head, and I'm gonna wrap it. And instead of even tying a knot, what I've been doing, I've just been hitting it with the UV light. Snip off your extra. Then there's your dark phase golden stone. And you can trim these legs down. You can really do a lot of different stuff with this. But there's your little golden stone right there. And this is a darker one than the one on the thumbnail there. And then here's your big heavy woolly booger. And so I would float that woolly booger down on the bottom. I would have this thing bouncing behind it up above it on a split rig. And that's my favorite pattern in my hometown rivers. And again, I go heavy because I got deep, fast flowing water. Again, if you don't have that, you can go to a light no lead if it's shallow, real slow moving. Again, you can always change the color phases on these. They go pretty much any color. So that's how we do them, folks. That's what they look like. There's your finished product. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, suggestions, or if you just want to tell me, talk some trash, I love that stuff. It's all on there. Hit me up with a comment. Alrighty. Adios.